So imagine buying like a multi-million dollar liquid-cooled supercomputer.
Okay.
You bring it home, you set it on your desk, and you try to use it as a paperweight.
A very, very expensive paperweight.
Right. And you would probably be pretty frustrated when it didn't hold your papers down very well. And frankly, the computer's fans might overheat just trying to process why it's sitting idle.
Yeah, and that is essentially what happens when the average person brings home a German Shepherd, expecting a standard sleep on the rug kind of pet. It is a complete mismatch of expectations versus reality.
Because we have this tendency, I think, to project a very transactional view onto our dogs. Like, we feed them, we throw a ball, they sleep, and they just blend seamlessly into the background of our lives.
Exactly. But if you try that with a German Shepherd, the illusion shatters almost immediately.
Yeah, because you look into their eyes and you don't just see a pet waiting for a treat, you actually see the gears turning.
Hmm.
You are dealing with a highly complex, thinking creature that is constantly analyzing its environment.
On
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to decode the psychology of the German Shepherd. We've got this really comprehensive behavioral and training guide, and we're bridging the gap between why this specific breed is universally revered for its sheer brilliance
Right.
and why, at the exact same time, they can be so overwhelmingly challenging for the average person to manage.
The foundational shift we have to make today, right off the bat, is understanding that a German Shepherd's behavior is never truly random.
Like, there's always a reason.
Always. Every pacing habit, every intense stare, every time they bark at the window, it's a direct output of a highly sensitive, fiercely intelligent working heritage. Our goal today is to give you the actual mechanics of how these dogs process the world. We're essentially handing you the owner's manual for that canine supercomputer.
And I guess to read that manual, we have to start with their original operating system. Like, if you want to understand how a German Shepherd sitting in a suburban living room today learns and behaves, you have to rewind to what they were engineered to do, which is herding.
Yes, herding is the absolute key to everything.
And I'll admit, when I first thought of herding, I just pictured a dog running really fast in circles, barking at sheep. It seemed purely physical to me.
Well, a lot of people picture exactly that. But true herding is basically playing high-speed chess in an open field. It is profoundly mental. You cannot herd sheep on autopilot.
Because the situation is always changing.
Exactly. A shepherd working a massive flock on a hillside, they can't micromanage the dog's every step. The dog has to constantly read a chaotic, moving situation. They have to anticipate where, say, a stubborn ram might break away.
Oh, wow. So they're crunching the numbers themselves.
They really are. They have to make split-second calculations and adjust their physical pressure in real time.
So they're managing like 100 moving variables at once.
Precisely. And breeding for that specific job requirement over generations, it hardwired a very rare psychological paradox into their DNA. They were selected for two traits that usually sit at opposite ends of the spectrum: highly independent problem-solving capabilities, paired with an intensely strong, almost gravitational focus on their human handler.
Which is so strange when you think about dog breeds generally, because usually you get a hound that is incredibly independent, can track a scent for miles, but absolutely does not care what you want.
Right. They're on their own mission.
Yeah. Or you get a lapdog that stares at you all day waiting for direction, but couldn't figure out a puzzle toy to save its life. But the German Shepherd somehow has both of those things.
They do. They are hardwired to look to their human for the overarching goal, but they possess the intellectual capacity to figure out the specific mechanics of how to achieve that goal on their own.
It's like they are middle managers on a factory floor.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they have a CEO they report to the handler, and they deeply want to please that boss. But they still absolutely demand the autonomy to make executive decisions on the fly when, the machinery breaks down.
That analogy perfectly captures their cognitive framework. And the crucial takeaway for anyone listening is that even if a modern German Shepherd has never seen a sheep in its entire lineage, that middle manager drive doesn't evaporate.
Right, it's just baked in.
It doesn't disappear just because they live in a townhouse now. They have an innate biological need for a job, a heightened state of environmental awareness, and a deep, driving desire to understand the actual structure, the why behind what they're being asked to do.
Which explains how they learn. They aren't just blindly memorizing a trick for a piece of kibble. They're actively looking for patterns. They're asking, what is the algorithm of this game we're playing?
Exactly.
And our source material points out that because they are so adept at pattern recognition, they can pick up a brand new cue in just 5 or 6 repetitions.
It's operant conditioning. Fast forward. They quickly map the causality. Like,
Yep.
oh, when I sit here while the leash is clipped, the door opens. But that speed of acquisition is exactly why they can be challenging.
Because they learn the bad stuff just as fast.
You hit the nail on the head. A brain that records good habits in 5 repetitions is going to record terrible habits in 5 repetitions too. They are constantly writing new code based on how you interact with them.
And that intense focus on the handler, that constant scanning of the CEO for the game plan, that naturally spills over into how they communicate, doesn't it? It's an incredibly interactive relationship. Owners always talk about the back and forth quality with this breed.
Yes, the intense eye contact.
Yeah, the way the dog seems to be studying their face.
Right, and to facilitate that level of dialogue, the breed possesses a profound emotional sensitivity. Now, a well-socialized German Shepherd is a confident, robust dog.
Mm.
But that confidence coexists with an incredible responsiveness to their environment. Think of their nervous system like a highly calibrated military-grade radar dish.
Okay, let me push back on the word sensitive for a second.
Yeah.
Because when I hear emotionally sensitive, I think of like a delicate flower, a dog that gets its feelings hurt easily. But we are talking about police dogs, military dogs, search and rescue. Are we saying they're fragile?
That is such a critical distinction to make. Sensitive in behavioral psychology does not mean fragile or weak. It means perceptive.
Oh, got it. Perceptive.
Yeah, they have an incredibly low threshold for detecting environmental changes. While a golden retriever might completely ignore a subtle sigh or a slight tensing of your shoulders, the German Shepherd's radar dish catches all of it.
They don't miss a thing.
Not a thing. They are processing micro-expressions on your face, minute shifts in your tone of voice, and the underlying cortisol levels or tension in the household.
Wow. But that perceptiveness, that's a double-edged sword. It makes them unparalleled working partners because they practically read your mind. But it also means their own emotional state is a sponge for whatever environment they're in.
Exactly. If your house is chaotic and you are stressed, the dog is going to absorb and reflect that chaos right back at you.
Which brings us to the mechanics of training and why old school methods fail so spectacularly with this breed. Because they're so perceptive and eager to engage, modern, evidence-based, reward-driven training is highly effective. You're working with their natural desire to cooperate.
Yes, you're leveraging what they're already built to do.
Right. But contrast that with outdated dominance-based or, physical punishment methods. We know those backfire. But let's talk about the why mechanically. Why does flipping a dog on its back or using harsh corrections break a German Shepherd?
Well, if you look at it through the lens of their psychology, it makes perfect sense. Remember, they are independent problem solvers who are actively trying to read your subtle cues to figure out the game.
Right.
If you suddenly introduce harsh physical dominance, they don't process that as, oh, you are the alpha leader. They process that as you becoming an unpredictable, chaotic threat.
That makes sense. The boss just went crazy.
Right. It triggers a defensive hypervigilance rather than a cooperative learning state. You aren't teaching them. You are short-circuiting that middle manager by creating an environment of fear. A relationship-driven approach works because it respects their intellect.
So we have this brilliant, emotionally attuned middle manager living in our house. Let's talk about how that translates to their relationship with the family unit, because loyalty is arguably the most famous German Shepherd trait.
Without a doubt.
But loyalty, in practice, usually manifests as intense protectiveness.
It manifests as a natural, hardwired watchfulness. They are inherently inclined to monitor their territory and vocalize when the baseline changes. A knock at the door, an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a strange shadow outside the window.
Right, the alert barking. And I think a lot of owners view that barking as a behavioral problem they need to eradicate.
Which is a huge mistake.
Yeah, it's kind of like buying a state-of-the-art ADT security system and then getting furious when it beeps to tell you a window opened. That is literally its function. You don't smash the alarm keypad with a hammer. You just have to program it so it knows the difference between a burglar with a crowbar and the mail carrier dropping off an Amazon package.
That is exactly how an owner needs to approach guarding tendencies. You cannot, and honestly you should not, try to punish the protective instinct out of a German Shepherd.
Because it's just part of who they are.
It is a legitimate, deeply ingrained feature of their character. If you try to suppress it with harsh corrections, you just create a dog that is silently anxious until it eventually explodes into reactivity.
So how do you practically program the security system then? We always hear the term early socialization, but what does that actually look like in reality? It's not just throwing a puppy into a chaotic dog park, right?
No, absolutely not. In fact, chaotic dog parks can often create reactivity. True socialization is about calm, neutral exposure.
Neutral exposure, what does that mean?
It looks like taking your young dog to a park bench, sitting at a distance and feeding them high-value treats while they just watch bicycles, strollers, and people with hats walk by.
Oh, so they're not even interacting, they're just observing.
Exactly. You are giving that intelligent brain a massive database of normal, non-threatening events. You are calibrating the radar dish so the dog can accurately evaluate a situation later in life without panicking. You channel the protectiveness through structure and world experience.
But this intense bond has a flip side, doesn't it? Because they thrive on handler engagement and because their baseline arousal for doing a job is so high, separation-related difficulties are a massive challenge. Like, what happens when you take that brilliant middle manager and lock them in an empty office for 10 hours a day?
It is essentially sensory deprivation. You have an animal wired for complex interaction, lived in total isolation without an outlet. It goes against everything in their biology. It's incredibly challenging for their minds, which often leads to destructive chewing, obsessive pacing, or, vocalization.
And we should add a very clear caveat here for the listener. If a dog is experiencing extreme, persistent distress when left alone, like we're talking destroying door frames or injuring themselves, that crosses the line from boredom into clinical separation anxiety.
Yes, that is a medical and behavioral emergency.
Right. That requires consulting a veterinarian or a certified behaviorist, not just trying to DIY a solution from a deep dive.
Absolutely. True separation anxiety involves a panic response that needs professional management. But for general prevention, the key is teaching a puppy early on that alone time is safe and relaxing. And crucially, ensuring their physical and cognitive needs are fully drained before you ever walk out the door.
Which brings us perfectly into the practical reality of living with this breed. Because knowing how their minds operate, it becomes glaringly obvious why well-meaning owners end up in way over their heads.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Let's invent a hypothetical first-time owner. Let's call him Dave.
Okay, Dave.
Dave brings home a beautiful German Shepherd puppy, thinking it's going to be great with his kids and his other pets.
And just to pause on Dave's expectation there, he's actually right. German Shepherds can be phenomenal with children. They often display a very touching gentleness and watchfulness, and they do great with other pets, provided they are properly socialized early on.
Because of that intelligence, right?
Yes. Because of their intelligence, they are very adept at learning the specific boundaries of a household.
But Dave has to actually teach those boundaries. So fast forward a year, it's a Saturday. Dave is frustrated because his adolescent German Shepherd is chewing the drywall and pacing the living room. Dave says, "I don't get it. I just ran him for 5 miles. He should be tired." What is Dave's first major mistake here?
Well, Dave is confusing physical exhaustion with mental stimulation. This is the single most common pitfall I see. Dave essentially just built a marathon runner.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Running a German Shepherd for 5 miles just improves their cardiovascular endurance. It does absolutely nothing to satiate their cognitive drive.
You can't just run the body. You have to exhaust the brain. So what does that actually look like for Dave?
Dave needs to engage their olfactory system or their problem-solving skills. Scent work is a perfect example. A massive portion of a dog's brain is dedicated to processing smells.
So like sniffing out treats.
Exactly. When you hide a toy or a specific scent in the yard and force the dog to systematically search for it, you are forcing them to do complex data processing. 15 minutes of intense, structured scent work will exhaust a German Shepherd far more than a mind-numbing 5-mile run on a sidewalk.
15 minutes.
Wow. Because it's mental work. They need obedience puzzles, trick training, or agility. Without it, you have a physically fit dog that is completely, fundamentally, mentally frustrated.
Okay, so Dave starts hiding treats in the yard. But Dave is still struggling because of mistake number 2. The chaotic CEO syndrome. Inconsistency.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Right. So on Monday, Dave lets the dog sleep on the couch. On Tuesday, Dave's partner yells at the dog for being on the couch. On Wednesday, they just ignore the dog entirely.
For a dog that is biologically driven to find the pattern and follow the rules of the job, inconsistency is pure torture. It spikes their anxiety.
You just don't know what the rules are.
Exactly. They cannot succeed if the rule book keeps changing. They crave predictable expectations, clear boundaries, and black and white structure. When the humans in the house aren't on the same page, the middle manager gets incredibly stressed trying to appease conflicting directives.
Which leads to Dave's third mistake, and this is a classic: misinterpreting the dog's behavior. Dave looks at the chewed drywall and thinks, my dog is doing this out of spite. My dog is being bad.
Dogs do not possess the cognitive framework for spite. It's just not how their brains work.
It's not revenge.
No, the behavior isn't malice, it's a symptom. It is an unmet physiological or psychological need bubbling to the surface. The dog is practically begging for an intellectual outlet or clear direction.
Right.
When owners label an intelligent breed as simply bad or stubborn, they completely miss the opportunity to look at the environment and ask, what part of this dog's operating system is currently malfunctioning because of how I'm managing it?
It is a really honest reality check. Can a German Shepherd be a great fit for a first-time owner like Dave? Yes, but only if Dave is willing to undergo a serious self-assessment. It's not about how many dogs you've owned in the past. It's about your willingness to adapt your lifestyle to accommodate a working mind.
That's beautifully said. If you want a dog that requires nothing from you but a quick walk and some kibble, the intellect of a German Shepherd will become a massive source of stress in your life. But if you are prepared to take on a highly capable partner and you commit to structure and consistent engagement, the rewards are unmatched.
Let's pull all of these threads together. Our mission today was to uncover the psychology of the German Shepherd. What we've discovered is an animal that is brilliant, deeply communicative, incredibly perceptive, and fiercely loyal. They are the ultimate middle managers, requiring a calm, consistent CEO to give them a framework, but possessing the independent intelligence to execute complex tasks.
And when you meet their physical, social, and mental needs with clear guidance, they step fully into their reputation as one of the most trustworthy and capable companions in the canine world.
But before we go, I want to pivot back to something we discussed earlier. We talked about how the German Shepherd's radar dish is exceptionally tuned in to household tension, your micro-expressions, and your tone of voice.
Yes, and it leads to a very provocative thought to leave you with. If this breed's emotional state is essentially a mirror, constantly absorbing and reflecting the energy of its immediate environment, what does your dog's behavior right now say about your state of mind?
That completely flips the script. It moves the conversation from how do I fix my stubborn dog to what is my dog's anxiety or calm focus trying to tell me about my own emotional baseline today?
Exactly.
It is exactly why understanding the mechanics of their minds is so vital. When you realize how finely tuned their perception is, you realize just how deeply tethered to us they truly are. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complex, demanding, and extraordinarily rewarding psychology of the German Shepherd. We'll catch you on the next one.